Hey folks, welcome back to another video. Just now someone asked me on my Discord why the sine oscillator pops or gives back some crackles when you trigger a sine with an AD. And I want to show you a small trick how you can circumvent this. It's getting a bit complicated in the end, but you get the idea. So the problem is when you use an AD and an output here, and use a short attack time, right? And then you trigger basically this here. You hear a small little crack at the start. Right? You can hear a small little crack. Hopefully it's audible on the YouTube video. So the problem here is basically that the attack time is pretty short. That's the first thing. And then when we trigger the sine, we start basically at the, with the cycle here at -1. So this means this signal is used to drive your speaker cone out and inside of the speaker. So it's basically moving the membrane. So you start with the -1 value instantaneously when you trigger the sound. So this is basically the crackle you can hear in your headphones or maybe on your speakers. So what we need to do is, or what you can do is, or what I usually do is I just ease out here a bit of the attack time. So we can start at -1, but the AD smoothly brings in the sine wave over time, right? So you can. So it's already smooth, right? So, but maybe you want to have a steep attack. So how can you remove the crackle with a steep attack? So one thing you can do is you can move the cycle or offset the cycle to a zero crossing. So instead of starting at -1, we want to start at 0. So we can do this here with the constant. At least that's the easiest way I know. Input this here and then go to 25%. And when you use here an oscilloscope, we can see here by just using now here the phase knob, we can offset the phase or the cycle of the sine oscillator. We go to 25. So move it basically to the left until we start here with the 0 in the cycle. So now we can trigger the sound. Or actually, we have to re-trigger also. So we start at the same position, right? If you don't do that, if you disable this, basically the sine oscillator runs free all the time, and it is decided by random when you press a key, when you bring in a certain cycle point, right? So you have to re-trigger the phase every time you hit a key to start at the same position when you trigger. So now it's completely smooth with a steep attack time because we start at 0. But now we have a different problem, and that's when you have a long decay time, something like this, right? And when you re-trigger the sine oscillator while you are in the decay phase. Right, so we have a crack again because we are already unmuting the sine oscillator or the output of that. And while we are playing the sine oscillator, we re-trigger the sine here and we get this crack again because we just cut off basically a sound and start at a different position in the phase. So you get basically this crack or this pop. So one thing we can do is we can make the decay time shorter, of course, so it fits more like the triggering speed. So when you have short triggers, something like this, you have to make sure that the decay time basically matches your space between the triggers. So when you trigger this often like this, right, you can't use a long decay. So you have to use a short one, something like this. If you can't do this manually, you can do this automatically also by a small little patch you can do. what you can do is you use here a logic operator and use a comparison. And we get here the signal of the AD, the shape of the envelope. We get this here with this blue output. You can see here, right? So when the envelope is finished with its sequence here, we can see we go back here with this signal to 0. So we can use this output here and compare it with 0. So this input is completely empty, so it's 0. So when the input is 0, so when we are back here, or when the cycle is finished of the envelope, we get a 0. So this is 0 and this is 0, we get a trigger. So we can use this trigger then to compare it to an end. Something like this. This is not possible, so we need here a long delay to make a feedback, because we are feeding the output back into the input, so it's a feedback loop. So we get this here, maybe make this also yellow. And the trigger input here, we can't use this anymore, so we use a gate input. Right? So now we can't re-trigger basically the AD until the last envelope cycle is finished. Right? I re-trigger, but it doesn't actually play until it's completely at 0, which takes a while here. Right? But now we also re-trigger basically the sine while we are in the decay phase, which also leads to a crack or to a pop. So we move this here to the front, use this as an input, disable here the precord, and make sure we only re-trigger when the decay phase here is finished. Maybe you go here to digital 1, something like this. So right, the decay phase basically decides how often you trigger now. Also use your trigger input, something like this, instead here of my keyboard input. So we use your 16 nodes. You can see we don't actually re-trigger that often. If you want to re-trigger more, you have to make the AD shorter. It's also probably a neat trick here if you want to increase the triggering speed without changing here the triggers value. You just do the setup, always wait until the phase from the envelope is over. And then you can make here the triggering faster by just moving this in. And it should be completely in. Yeah, it's completely synchronized. Okay. And you can hear sometimes we still have a crackle here, and you can maybe add here a bit of delay to that. It's not super precise. Maybe a bit of here attack. But yeah, what I wanted to say is basically the problem when you have these pops and clicks, always think about what the signal does to your speaker cone. So if you move your speaker cone in or out instantaneously to +1 or to -1, you get a crackle. So always start, if possible, at a 0 value, at a 0 crossing of a sound. That's also why you do fade-ins or fade-outs on samples when you chop up a break or chop up some vocal sounds or something along those lines. You always want to bring in a small little fade, so you prevent basically to start at the minus or +1 value, and always start with a smooth fade-in, with a smooth transition from 0 to +1 or to -1. So you want to have a 0 crossing at the beginning. So this is what it leads to crackles, and this is what you can do here to prevent this. I know it's a bit complicated, but like I said in the beginning, you also can just do here the easy route and use an attack and a decay. So you have the same problem. Right, we restart here even in the decay phase. So when you do bass lines or these bass triggers, yeah, make sure you start always at the 0 value. I think that's it. For this video, I want to give you this information so you can try it out for yourself and maybe solve these problems. Okay, thanks for watching. Leave a like if you liked the video. Subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one. Bye.